Well, pretty good? Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce my brothers. These are my brothers. These are the people that sort of keep me grounded and focused. And when I want to put everything on the shelf and say, never mind, nobody cares, they push me forward. This is Yves Baya. This is Richard Tabor. By the end of this evening, you are either going to be super proud that you're black or you're going to want to be black. That's my goal.
Bars.
So, I'm going to just go ahead and go through like this. This is what Noire Absolue is for me. It's a letter to the African diaspora. What does that mean? That means there's this moment that we're kind of going through, at least in the Western world, and I know from some of my friends in other parts of the world as well, where it's kind of not cool to be black on one hand, and then it's super cool to be black on another hand. And in some places, like where I come from, the United States, it's dangerous to be black, okay? So that's what this is about. So my concept is to give something positive that is edifying for the culture of Afro-diasporic people, okay? So this is my friend Richard. What does Richard do? Richard is a conceptual fine art photographer. That's one thing. Richard also is a brilliant technician when it comes to technology. He's not going to tell you that, but that's the truth. He's got an interesting background, and what Richard is going to do for you is he's going to actually interview me so that you can find out about me. So I'm in the hot seat now. I interviewed Richard on my podcast a while back, and how many people have actually listened to my podcast? How many people? Okay. How many people have heard Richard's podcast? It's good. It's funny. It's good. So Richard is going to ask me a few questions so you can learn about me, and then we'll move on to these topics. That's for you to help you sort of get juiced.
Get juiced.
Okay? And then we'll introduce you to my other brother, Yves, who is a fantastic videographer and creative and a very kind person. He's got the biggest heart. He's the person that keeps me positive when I'm kind of going in the wrong direction. He's that guy. And he'll never tell you that because he's, can I say that you're shy?
Shy.
Can I say you're modest?
I'm modest.
He's modest. So I'll say it for him, okay? So he's going to jump in just a few minutes. But why don't you ask questions so that they can know who I am? Just pretend you don't know me. Hi, Richard.
Cool.
My name is Mona.
Hi, Mona. Let's start with, who are you?
My name is Mona. No, I'm just kidding. So my name is Mona Pen Jousset, and yeah, that's kind of French. I'm not French. I'm married to a French man. He's in this room. He's over there. And I'm from the States, United States. I've been in the Netherlands for about 6 years now, and I was living in France for 7 years. And I teach. I teach English and also business administration, international business topics, entrepreneurship, things like that. But at the heart of me, I'm a creative. I'm not a great photographer. I cannot sing, but I can appreciate music and art and all the things that sort of bind us together. That's where I'm coming from.
And how did the Mona transition to the Makers magazine? Well, what is the Makers magazine? How
Yeah.
did that become?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was in the States in 2017. I went to visit my son, who's also in this room right there. And it was about 1 month before Donald Trump was going to become president. And I was with my daughter who came to visit for Christmas. She is sitting right there. That's my daughter, Anissa. And I said to her that I was very sort of disturbed about all the things that were happening in the news with African Americans. And there were a lot of shootings at the time, police shootings. And I was very uncomfortable about the whole thing. So my idea was to find a way to bring positivity, like a place where people could click on a link and know that this is going to be positive news, something that is actually creative coming from the African diaspora versus something that's negative or another body in the street. That was becoming very, very heavy and very depressing, to be honest. So my idea was to figure out a way to centralize creativity for people who make interesting ideas, make beautiful products, things like that. But I wanted to start with the African diaspora because we often have magazines that say, oh, it's for everyone. But it's not really everyone. It's everyone that doesn't look like me and then one me, right? So I decided to start with everyone that's a bunch of me, and then we'll go from there. So I flipped it over a little bit.
And did you find these people? I mean, where do you start? How does this?
Yeah. Actually, what I did is I started doing this. This is a good place to skip a little bit. This is what I did. I started to sort of cheat, and I found that people like to look at nice things. So I started to harass photographers that I would find online and reach out to them, which is how I found every single photographer in this exhibit. And for whatever reason, they all respond to me. They're positive. They say, yes, I'll be in your magazine. Yes, you can borrow my work. And one of the photographers, Akona Kenku from South Africa, is the first person I actually interviewed. So we're going to see her later this evening as well.
Interesting.
Make sense?
Yeah. I lost train of track because I was so into your story. It's very interesting how you found everybody and brought them all together and got them here. So in what context do you like see this happening? How does this work?
I think for me, it's about finding a way in. So I'm looking for, you know what I'm looking for, Max? The bicycle. I need the bicycle. This is a perfect question. This will make sense in 2 seconds. That's what I'm looking for. So you're asking me, how does it work? Like, how do you... So everyone knows what this is, right? We all have, you've either... Raise your hand if you've seen this object before in your life. Have you seen this? Okay.
Look, there's one right there.
So here's what I'm trying to do. Perfect question, because people very often ask me, how do you get into this? How do you find these people? I'm looking for a commonality, something that we all have in common. I know we're in the Netherlands. You've either fallen off of a bike, had a bike stolen, you have a bike, you got here on a bike, or you've seen one before, right? So you have to find things that connect people. And I think that beautiful imagery connects people. That's my point. So this is my way in. And what I'm saying to you, this is me trying to kind of like do a memory trick so that when you leave here, I want you to remember what I'm saying to you. Like, why is she showing me bicycle tires? I didn't come to see bicycle tires. This center, for me, is what Africanity and Blackness is. But you could also think of it, the flip side, the negative side of that, could be racism. We all have experienced some kind of racism or seen it, or we know about it, or maybe it's real, maybe it's not real. But what you want to look for is a way into it. This has 22 spokes on it, 22. So if you think about it, there's 22 different ways that you can approach a problem. If you don't look at all the parts on the outside, the whole doesn't function. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't have just the center without the expanding parts. So that's my goal as an educator, to get people to sort of higher order thinking versus lower order thinking. All the pieces that make the part. That's how I get into it. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
What's the end goal for?
The end goal is this. That's you, by the way. So the end goal is for you to find a way in to this dialogue. My way in was the eyes. So I started to look at the world differently, and this sort of looking at the world differently came maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was teaching in France. I had all this multitude of students who would talk to me about racism, and they couldn't understand the dynamic of racism in the United States versus what it looks like in France, for example. Or they would come from Senegal or China, and they had questions about it. So the goal is for people to find a way in to this dialogue, whether you're part of the African diaspora or not, because I think we all are in one way, but that's a different podcast, right? So the goal is to find ways for us to connect, so that when we leave this room, you have a new way of thinking. That's the goal.
Interesting.
Right?
I could.
Yeah. We're going to save that. And what I'm going to do is introduce Eve a little bit, because Eve, and thank you, Richard, for doing that. What I want to do is have you tell us a little bit about who you are, because I know what you do, but they don't know what you do.
Well, basically, I'm a filmmaker. Film and video productions is my core business. But in the core, I'm just a creative soul who's just trying to tell like as many stories as possible that I can identify with. That's like the short version of who I am, basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And so how long have you been in the Netherlands, though? And where did you come from?
My mother is from Angola, and my father is from Congo. I was born in Congo, in Kinshasa. And when I was 3, we left Congo and went to Germany. And I lived in Germany, let's say, till I was like 10. So I also speak German. Ich rede auch ein klein bisschen Deutsch. Für die Leute, die Deutsch reden. So I also speak German. And I came to the Netherlands when I was 10, 11-ish, and I'm now 32, so you do the math.
Okay. And what other languages do you speak?
I speak Lingala. That's the language they speak in Congo and in some parts of Angola. I speak German. I speak, as you can hear, also English. And last but not least, I also speak Dutch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to speak French.
You used to speak French.
I used to speak.
How can you used to speak a language?
Now, basically, when we came to the Netherlands, we first were placed in how do you say that? Asylum centers.
Yeah.
And after a few years in asylum centers, you don't have people around you who speak your language, and one of those languages was French. And in a furthest phase of my life, we also lived in foster care, in foster homes, and there no one spoke French. So my father wasn't around and my mother wasn't around, so that's how you unlearn a language when you don't have it in your surrounding anymore.
Yeah, you just don't practice.
I don't practice, but Lingala mixes a lot of French in it, because Congo used to be colonized by Belgium, and the Belgians, they left a mark behind. So we also use a lot of French words in our vocabulary.
These things happen. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah. What's the art form?
The art form?
Yeah, what's the art form that you use to express, to find the stories?
I use music as well. I use events. I also use film and video. So those are the 3. I also use the draw. So those are the 4 art forms I use to express myself.
I like it. I like it. It is, we have about 10 minutes. Jake, are we able to get Akona online? What I'd like to do is, there's an artist in our exhibit. Her name is Akona Kenku. She's from South Africa. She was meant to be sitting at this table with us, but these things happen. So we're going to have her Skype in later. So Jake, whenever she's ready, you let me know, and I'll veer off, okay? So in the meantime, I wanted to show you something. This is for you, too. You might like this. This is one of the books that got me started. This book is just called Black. It's in French. It's just called Black. It's by a French author who is a professor as well. And the thing about this book is that it's not about black people. It's about the color black. That's it. So I use that as my starting point. It's called Noire, right? And so if you're looking into it, you get into these dialogues with people about blackness and racism and all of this, but I honestly, sincerely think people don't understand how deep this runs. Like, you think about 17th century, 18th century, this is all the way back to antiquity and Greek times. We're talking about the origins and the foundations of Western culture. And I don't know if you've ever really thought about the color black, but it's something we're thinking about. And are you aware that it used to not be a color? Is everyone aware of that? It wasn't always a color, right? And then it became a color again in 1950. And so we're talking about the Greek times. This is before Christianity. So this goes really deep. That means you have to really think about what you're saying when you say it. So by the time you get to the Bible, and everything in the Bible is negative, that's black, and then everything that's positive is white, which brings you to this text, for example. This is, this one. Has anyone read this? Is Gloria Wecker, White Innocence? Just raise your hand if you've read it, White Innocence. Okay. Raise your hand if you've heard of it, White Innocence. Okay. You need to read it. Okay. This book is, I know I gave this to Richard one day. I showed him this on the train. Can I tell him what you said? Okay. He went like, he took the book and he went like, okay, I read it. Right? Because he knows what's in it. Because he's Dutch. But I'm not Dutch, so I wanted to see what the Dutch perspective was. And it's very interesting because it details the racism and the sort of negativity around the word black. And there are 2 words for white, I think, in Dutch also. if that's not true?
Blanc
Yeah.
and wit.
Yeah.
Blanc and wit. Yeah.
Right? And they have sort of different meanings, right?
Yeah, blanc.
There is a Kona. Go
Blanc
for it.
is more like pure.
Yeah.
That's the meaning behind blanc. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Is-
Oh, okay.
But the underlying meaning of it, it's everything that's positive, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we have to come back to that. Look, we have South Africa on the line. Akona, can you hear me?
Hi, Mona.
Hello, my dear. This is Akona Kenku.
I'm just walking to find a bit of good reception.
Okay, fair enough. We will find your work. That's Akona. Okay.
I think this is good.
Okay. So, Akona, we have a lot of people from Amsterdam in this room right now. And what we're going to do is I want to tell them something about you that they don't know first. It's not weird, it's a good thing. So, Akona is the first person I interviewed on my podcast, the very first person. I had no website, I had no Instagram. I just had an idea, and I emailed her, and she actually responded positively. So she's the first person. Second thing about Akona is that when you do listen to the podcast, there's an intro that tells you that you're listening to the Maker Podcast, a truly global portrait of the art of life. She went and recorded that for me because I harassed her into doing it with her little iPhone because I like her accent. So she's also that voice of my podcast. Are you comfortable yet, Akona?
Yeah, I'm good now.
Doing Tai Chi over there.
I can't see everyone.
You cannot?
No, it's just Jake's picture. A beautiful picture.
They're adjusting the camera to see if it gets any better for you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Hi.
there you go.
can see
Say
you
hello,
guys,
Amsterdam. So, Akona, what we're going to do is, can you tell us just very briefly how you got into photography?
Okay, so I bumped into photography. A friend of mine, my best friend, Booty, he told me about this photography school.
Yeah.
And we went there and I saw a gallery and it was all female photographers who were showing at the time. And I lost my mind. And literally, I went back home and I told them, I need to be a photographer. Never thought of it before. That's the short part of it. It also has to do a lot with my family album, which I lost as a kid. So I had all these memories that were never, that I have, but the images were lost in moving. So I needed to capture, to hold on to things, and photography was my way to do that.
Okay, fair enough. And so what we're going to do is, can you tell us the name of the first exhibit you did? What was the name of that?
That was Kick Push.
Okay.
Kick Push, then I did Society, and then I just recently did In Between.
Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, can you look at your WhatsApp? I'm going to send you the picture that we're talking about if you can't see it.
Cool.
And then what you can do is you can look at it and you can tell us how you got to it.
Okay.
And what it's all about. We're just going to do this one at a time.
All right,
Okay,
cool.
yeah, do that. Max is going to actually make it easier for me. So you can't see us, but you can see this picture for a second.
Oh, yeah.
You see that?
Okay. I remember that.
So that's the one that we're displaying downstairs today. So tell us a little bit about Kick Push
Cool.
2010.
So this image is part of Kick Push, which was my first body of work. And the guys in the pictures were guys I grew up with. And skating at the time was not such a big thing in townships. It's expensive, kind of well-established places, and Soweto was not as established to have skate parks at the time. So most of the guys in this image were my friends. well, still are my friends. And yeah, I asked to follow them around. And yeah, and just started hanging out with the guys. You know, when you see the larger body of work of Kick Push, you then start seeing like intimate spaces, which I was really interested in, because skateboarding has been seen in a particular way. It's been, you know, very commercialized, and you hardly got to know the skater beyond the skateboard. And I got interested in their personal lives. So a lot of the body of work has to do with that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's
okay.
Kick Push.
And
Yeah.
was there any sort of pushback about you being a girl in this sort of masculine environment?
Not with these guys, because they were people that I hung out with. So it wasn't such a thing. And for a long time, I didn't want to even be called a female photographer, because it meant something else. It still does mean something else, that you get fewer jobs. You know, so I started kind of not being interested by this idea of being called a female photographer, because it felt it was a bit limiting for me at the time. But then with Skate Society, the second body that I did was where I started feeling that, oh shit, I am actually a female, you know, because, yeah, so this
that one, for example, yeah?
Yeah, so with Skate Society, it was a group of, it's kind of a, what do I call it? Like a crew, a skating crew, that had seen me work with skaters before, but there was such a close knit that I had to introduce myself, ask to get into their spaces. After a while, they accepted me into their space, but I was very aware that I'm a female, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Are you still there, Akona? You're frozen for us. We don't know if you can.
And they were a bit older. And I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're back. It's good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, with Skate Society, I think that's where I started feeling a bit of me being a female in the space. Also because I was dating one of the skaters in that crew, so it was, yeah, right. It was quite clear.
Right. So we've got one more Skate Society dueto, and then we're going to look at In Between. So this is our last one. What about this piece?
Oh, geez. These are such good memories for me, you know, because when I was doing I got funded for Skate Society, but as I was starting, and so I started following this crew, and you know, we then immediately became friends, like proper friends. I had seen them around, we had known each other for a while, but I had not been with them for a very long time. And when I was shooting this, I was constantly with them. Like after work, I would go to them, you know, and because I was dating one of the guys in the crew, I was constantly with them. So these were early mornings of probably a night of partying. And after, in the morning, the guys would go, hey, let's go find spots to skate. And this is like an abandoned spot in Soweto that we went, and they were just chilling, because I also don't, I try as much as not to get people to pose, because I want them to just do their thing, and I'm just like this fly with a camera.
Right.
And yeah, and they were just doing their thing. My camera bag is somewhere in there, because I was not even like, you know, composing to make, I don't know, it wasn't decided on what it was going to be.
Nice.
But it ended up becoming the cover of the body of work.
I love that. That's my favorite picture. That's the first picture I saw from your work.
Thank
you did
you.
Frame Reframed, 2016, I think, in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the first time I saw your work. Actually, the woman who took me there, she's in this room with me. She's the person who said, you should come and see what's at Frame Reframed. I think there's a woman's work there that you would like. Because I like the skateboard culture because it's kind of marginalized. And I like the mentality that goes with it.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't very often see, as simple as it is, a black person with a skateboard is like, I don't know, people don't see
Yeah.
it, but it's different. It's different, right?
Well, it used to be. At first, a lot of people that were skating were white skaters. But like if you now in Johannesburg, I mean, there's a lot of skaters right now. Like literally everywhere I go, there's skaters, and it's black skaters, which is really nice,
Yeah.
to see. And there's like local brands now that make skateboards. There's a brand called Funisu by a skater called Wandile Msomi, and then so Skate Society. There's a guy called Chava. He also now has a brand, and it's a Skate Society brand. It's called SSS. So yeah,
Very nice.
there's
Very nice.
been like huge like growth within the skate community this side.
That's very cool. Okay, I'm going to do one more for you. This is in between. I don't actually know anything about it, so I'll be learning for real. What's going on with in between?
So in between is maybe start with the title. So I decided to call it in between because I was literally in an in between space with skateboarding, where I've been very active at first. I'm getting older, and I've got a job, and I don't have much time to photograph as much as I used to. But also, I lost a friend in the skate park. He got stabbed and murdered. So it became, and decided not to follow any people, but for me to go to the spaces and go think. And it was somewhat therapy for me as well.
Yeah.
Because I got to be in certain places without anyone else's influence.
Okay.
And it seems to be something that's kind of closing my chapter of photographing skateboarding. I mean, I do photograph skateboarding because it's so much around me all the time. But I think right now I want to venture to other things and, kind of let this one, let the skateboarding images chill a bit.
Yeah. It's time to move on to the next phase.
Yeah. So this is my way of kind of closing this chapter.
Okay. I think, where's Max? Do we have time for maybe just a few questions? It's okay. Is there anyone out there in this little audience that wants to ask Akona any questions while we have her? If she were sitting here right now, she'd be super happy to answer. Anybody have questions? Someone said, what's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
So a lot of my work is very organic, so I don't really plan. Things come to me. And, I've been living in the Johannesburg CBD. That's been something very interesting to photograph because there's a bit of danger involved with me walking around with a camera. It's been a lot of brainstorming on how I'm supposed to do this. But I don't want to force any idea at the moment because I'm trying to close in between. It's not finished yet. So I'm still dealing with that. And once that's done, I want to do a publication, a book to close it down because I've been photographing skateboarding for like almost 10 years.
Okay.
So I think that chapter needs to really close in order for me to really know what I'm going to do. I'm just photographing stuff at the moment to see where to go, but I'm not in any position to say what is actually next. So what is next is anything, really.
That's a good attitude. Is there anyone else who has a question? You have a question? Hang on, we're going to get you a microphone, okay? We got a question for you, Akona. Hang on.
I'm curious if you experience any challenges of photographing the skate scene in Joburg. Yeah, just that.
I didn't hear the end of that.
Yeah, so I was asking, I'm curious if you're experiencing, or if you had experienced any particular challenges with photographing the skate scene in Joburg.
Not much. But you know, it's if you're rolling with skaters, you already know that you're gonna deal with security guards who are gonna stop you from, you know, photographing or skating a specific spot. So I think those were main challenges, just like finding a place where people can actually skate without being thrown out of it, for them to actually enjoy. But really, no, like I've not. Hi there again. Yeah, it's not been that intense for me to not, you know, to run away from it. It's always nice to, also the edginess of it, you know, to negotiate with security guards, to run away from them.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
Yeah.
It can get a bit addictive as well. So yeah, no, not much challenges.
Nice. Anybody else have any other questions for? You have something you want to say? What do you want to say? Okay.
Also, because I'm not an actual skater, so I don't skate myself. I tried back in the day, and it became a bit too much for me because there was so much attention of a female skating. So I then kind of stepped back. So that meant that I had to find ways to follow the guys. At first, I would skate with them and try to, you know, keep up. But when I decided not to skate anymore, that became a bit of a situation for me because now I would have to follow these guys in other ways, you know, like I'll grab a cab to go meet them at the next spot. So I miss a lot of moments in between that. So had I been serious or had more of their attitude of just like, you know what, I'm going to do this anyway, I think perhaps the bodies of work would have gone another direction. But I also respect the ways that they have developed without me forcing to be a skater in order to photograph skateboarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else before we wrap this up with Akona? Any questions? No? We are going to see your work downstairs, and I'm going to send you pictures and let you know what the feedback is. And thank you so much again for coming to the Maker Podcast. Akona, it's your second round.
Thank you guys for coming through.
Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
talk
you
to you
very
soon.
much, Mona.
Okay? You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Max, how are we doing with the setup for Dana and everything's going to be okay? Looking good? Okay. So you let me know when she's actually there. And I'm going to just keep going. We're trying to patch in, I guess that's the answer. Trying to patch in Dana Scruggs at this moment. And until she is actually there. There she is. Dana, can you hear us?
Let me get my ear. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, get your earplugs. So Dana's gonna put on still more white things. She only wears white.
Yeah, I only wear white. But hi, I didn't expect everyone to be right there.
Yeah, we're right here.
Okay, okay. Just give me 1 second. I guess I was unprepared.
That's okay. These things happen. Not to me, but these things happen. That's all right. So while Dana's getting dressed in her house in Brooklyn, what we're going to do is I'm going to say to the people in this room that when I met Dana, I did the same thing that I always do, which is what I said to Richard. Same thing I did to Richard, same thing I did to Eve. When I want to know about someone, I just ask questions. I just sent her an email out of the blue. I don't know this person. She was working as a manager in a nail salon, I think, at the time, while also photographing on the side. Is that correct, when we met?
That's right.
Right. She's not working in a nail salon right now. Things have changed. So what we're going to do is have a little chat about how she got to where she is now and what happened before. I've got 3 pieces downstairs. Dana, they haven't seen your pieces yet. They're only going to see them on the screen. And you can walk us through the pieces, how you came to them, and then some of your thoughts on how you go from where you came from to achieving your dreams. That's pretty much it. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. That's Dana in Paris, by the way. It's a nice picture. Don't know who took it. Can you show Dana that picture, Max? Who took this picture, Dana?
Oh, that was at a friend of mine's wedding. Can you hear me? I feel like it's breaking up in my ear.
No, it's good. It's really good.
Okay.
It's really good.
Okay. Yeah, a friend of mine got married in Paris last summer, and me and one of her friends that I just met that day ended up doing this like photo shoot in the courtyard of this like old castle. It was like right next to the Ritz. Like they got married at the Ritz. It was a super fancy wedding. They got married at the Ritz in the garden, and they were the first people to get married in the garden after the renovation. So then the reception was at this like castle chateau type place next door. So like, yeah, one of the other guests that I had made friends with, we just had this like whole photo shoot, and then everybody like in the upper windows, like everybody was in the reception at the upper windows, and they were just like watching us like take photos of each other and like twirl around. So yeah,
it's nice.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Do we like this, people? We think it's nice? We think it's nice. Okay. Let's talk about Rose on the beach.
Yeah, so Rose he's a model slash chef that I'd wanted to photograph for a while, actually for a few years. And we could never kind of get it together. And then one day out of the blue, I was just like, I'm going to Mexico. And then I thought, Rose travels a lot. Why don't I just see if he wants to go to Mexico with me and do a photo shoot on the beach? So I just contacted him and said, hey, like I'm going to be in Mexico in August. I think this was August of like 2016, possibly. The years kind of just blend together, but I think it was August 2016. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to be in Mexico. Do you want to come with me? And he's like, actually, I'm going to be in Mexico for my birthday that same time. So that's just like a, manifestation when you kind of just make a decision to do something, right, and that, everything kind of aligns. So he was already going to be there. We ended up, meeting up in Cancun because I was only going to be in Mexico City, but I flew down to Cancun to meet him. And then we took a bus to Playa del Carmen, walked for over an hour on the beach to find a secluded beach at like, 50 pounds of gear on my back in a bikini and flip-flops in the blazing sun and no hat. And we finally got there and just spent the day on the beach making photographs and, and doing these nudes, which I'd always wanted to do nude photos of male models, but it's really hard to get their agencies to say yes to stuff like that. So luckily he was down and the photos turned out really beautifully.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to ask the audience if you have any burning questions and you insist on asking them now. It's fine with me. It's cool. I don't mind. Go ahead. Go for it.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I can't see you. I don't know.
Just a question. The idea behind a nude of a black man on the beach, is it just that's it, or you thought about something else? Because, for example, it's very common to see nudist beach in Europe. It's absolutely, I can understand in Mexico is not. I just went to Mexico and it's beautiful, but it's not very easy. But I think the taboo, there is a story behind it, or it's just he is gorgeous with the background. It's just a gorgeous picture.
Thank you.
But for example, in Europe, if you go to nudist beach, you would see all type of color and backgrounds except colored. So did that come to your mind, or there is a story behind it that we don't know? Is it for yourself?
Okay. Well, first, I guess not I guess, but in America, calling Black people colored is it's not okay. So just to let you know that it's just not. It's offensive. So I know you don't know that, but I just wanted to let you know. So in terms of the idea of shooting a Black man on the beach. I think a lot of narratives around shooting Black people, especially dark-skinned Black people, whether nude or clothed, is from a white perspective. So my goal has always been to photograph Black people, especially Black men, from a Black perspective and also a Black female perspective, because that's a very rare thing and it's not fetishized and it's not, you know, kind of like our culture isn't necessarily being like cannibalized in that way. It's coming from a place of empathy and understanding and beauty in terms of like, you know, I'm through my gaze of like being a Black woman. So, you know, I do aesthetically love, you know, the male body. And that's always been a focus of mine to photograph the athleticism and masculinity of men. So, you know, shooting them nude is, you know, I guess it's not necessarily like a taboo thing. It's just, you know, something that I'm interested in. And yeah, it's like more common in Europe for nudity, but it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm trying to break barriers, because like nudity, like people do a lot of nudes in America too. It's not like you're not really like breaking boundaries. But I just really, you know, I thought this would be a beautiful setting for him to be nude and for me to kind of like take my work to that place and that like level.
Nice. Good. Anyone else have any questions about this particular piece? I need a microphone, Max. Hang on, Dana. We've got another question about Rose.
Okay.
It's coming.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. I'm interested in the fact that the model isn't looking at us. It's like he's refusing the gaze. Was that a deliberate choice, or is it that he's looking at his or imagining his own kind of world that's not, he's kind of refusing to engage with us for a reason, or is it just you like the picture with him looking in that direction?
I just like the picture, you know. Sometimes it's not like there isn't a deeper meaning behind the choice, the selection. I think, you know, aesthetically, I just like the fact that he's not engaging with the camera and like the profile of his head. You know, like I think when I take photographs and when I make my selections, it's mainly about balance and like either an abstraction of like how the person is positioned, or it's mainly about positioning and how I like how the body is composed. I don't necessarily think about like, you know, a deeper meaning beyond how it looks aesthetically. Yeah.
Good. Does that answer your question? Is that good? Anybody else have any questions about Rose on the beach? There's another one. Thank you, Max. Another question for you about Rose, Dana.
Hi, I'm Kendrick.
Hi.
So I came from an art academy for 1 year here in the Netherlands, and there was always the same thing where people wanted to politicize or question the deeper meaning of my work. But how do you feel about that? That you make something because you just want to make it and just because you like it. How do you feel about that kind of aspect that everybody seems to always want to read an extra message into it and find political meaning in form?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I get that. You know, I totally understand that question, because for a long time I really didn't have, or I didn't realize that there were deeper meanings behind some of my work. And it was hard for me to talk about my work because, you know, everyone's like, oh, what does this mean? What does this photo mean to you? What was the point behind it? And most of the time it's just like, I love creating images of, you know, Black men, you know, either in motion or like with this photo of Rose, like in repose. You know, I just like creating, you know, aesthetically beautiful images that, you know, I enjoy and hopefully other people will enjoy. I do understand, you know, the deeper meaning of like me as a Black woman creating these narratives and taking control of the narrative around, you know, photographing Black people, just because like you know, throughout the centuries, like we've been, our culture has been, I guess, documented in a way that we don't have control of our narratives, through colonialism, through, you know, uh, at least like in America, like, you know, invading Black neighborhoods and kind of documenting the tragedies of Black people, or like going to like white people going to Africa and photographing, you know, basically poverty porn, and like not necessarily, you know, showing that there are other aspects to our lives as Black people. It's not just like suffering. So yeah, like in general, aesthetically, I'm just looking for something beautiful to photograph. There isn't necessarily a deeper meaning behind it, but like the narrative of me photographing Black people is also like a deeper, there's a deeper meaning behind that.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. I think I have another question for you about Rose. It's gonna take you, just relax, Dana. They like this.
Oh, I'm relaxed.
Okay, good.
You see my knee up here?
I
Like
do. I see that knee.
around.
I do. Chilling in Brooklyn. Max, do we have a microphone for? Can we? Unifor's got a question. Here comes another one.
Hi, Dana. Unifor
Hi.
here. You can't see
That's
me, but
Unifor. You remember him?
I can't see.
no, you can't see. But
You know who it is. You photographed
Is
him.
Unifor?
It's Unifor. Yeah.
Hi, how
hi
are
there,
you?
Hi there. I thought, let me give you a question. So
Okay, but first, congratulations on your baby.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, too bad
Hey.
you're not here to see him. But
I know,
next time.
I know. Hopefully I'll be there soon. I really, like, I'm so disappointed that I couldn't be there.
Well, definitely. So I was discussing your work with my neighbor, which you can see, lovely lady, who hadn't seen your work before, but she just made a comparison of your work to classic European, so Roman and Greek sculptures. And I was liking that also in your narrative, you're saying, like, oh, I don't have a deeper meaning, you know, I'm just focused on the aesthetics of the subject in front of me, which is quite funny because that's the same philosophy as the classic sculptures we're using. So I just wanted to share that with you, that my neighbor here had that theory about your work, and I fully agree with her. You know, you capture the subjects through your lens, but it feels like a sculpture. You know, the melanin in the skin feels like bronze. Obviously, the physique of the black male is very close to the classic Greek, like almost demigod physique. So I kind of like that comparison by my neighbor.
Okay, no, I agree with you, neighbor. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Cheryl. It's a beautiful image. I really love
Cheryl.
it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have gotten, you know, inspiration from, you know, classic sculpture. And I actually have a book over here somewhere that's like, it's a sculpture from antiquity to the present day. It's a book from Taschen. And I found it on the street, like in New York and Brooklyn, especially. People leave books out on, like, in front of their houses, or they'll leave things that they want to get rid of, like, you know, clothing,
Bodies.
or like I got a pashmina once, or like a really nice chair. So a lot of times people leave books out there, and I found like this really great book by from Taschen on sculpture, but I love going to the Met and looking at the sculptures there. And yeah, a lot of my work, especially, I guess, aesthetically around the subjects that I choose, they do have a certain body type. And I do kind of enjoy capturing, you know, the physicality of that kind of body type. And especially like the melanin, you know, darker skinned. And I think, you know, also within the narrative of photographing people with darker skin, you have a lot of white photographers that have gone to Africa and gone to different places and kind of made their names from, you know, photographing dark-skinned Black people. So I really enjoy the fact that, like, I'm kind of, you know, taking over that narrative from a Black perspective. Yeah.
Nice. Anyone else about Rose on the Beach? I got another one for Rose on the Beach. We're not going to get very far. Okay. It's cool. You can. I don't mind. By the way, people, I'm never texting. I'm up here. These are notes. I'm never texting. I'm not texting.
She's been texting though. She's lying. I mean, she's been Instagramming herself selfies the whole time.
No.
Hi again, Dana. First of all, I am a big fan. I'm the one who, I'm so sorry if it was offensive, but just on my personal opinion about color and black, I never met black people because I don't see that they look black, and I don't met white people that look white. I think it's so beautiful. I always say color because we're all different colors, like a rainbow. So
you should tell her where you're from, Ahmed. Tell her where you're from.
I'm from Kuwait, so I'm half Mediterranean, I'm half Kuwaiti, and married to a beautiful Italian man. So another question. I know in your pictures, and I like that narrative that there is no deeper meaning. But I know now you're becoming an editorial photographer, and congratulations with big success coming. And I think that's wonderful. Would it be difficult for you in the future because editorial images or photography, it's very political, especially in America. It's every image will be seen by 200 million people, but also it's a lot of money. So would it be difficult for you to move from your personal opinion to very political?
I guess I'm not understanding the question.
I mean, in your images, your photography, we see that it's because you love the background and you feel that it called you that time, and that moment was perfect to take the shot. And it's fantastic because it's very natural, it's very you. But now when you shift to editorial and you will be a paid photographer for a magazine or for a TV or for advertising, it will take you to a completely different aspect, different facade of your own photography, because you have to understand the target, the audience, when it's going to be. So it's it's going to have a deeper meaning than just a shot taken because you felt it. Would it be that difficult, or you already feel that you're okay to jump from personal, let's say maybe an exhibition or a paid editorial job?
Okay. So two things. Yeah, I totally understand, your perspective on the word colored, but it's also, it's still offensive. I know that you don't mean it, but it's like, but that's just the way it is, even though, like, let's say, there's a word that is offensive within your culture, but someone keeps saying it, even though because it's not offensive to them or they're coming at it from a different perspective. So, I think like that's the best way to think about it when you're calling, people of color or Black people colored. At least when you're talking to someone who's American within, our culture, it's like offensive. So just to give you some perspective on that. In terms of getting editorial work, I've been getting a lot of editorial work. I've been, doing a lot of, magazine. I have like 3 magazine covers that are either have come out or will come out within the next, month. And I've, had more advertising jobs. I just shot my first Nike campaign in Rio, which was kind of like amazing and like insane at the same time. I have another advertising job coming up next week. In terms of, being able to translate my work from like personal work to advertising or to editorial, I look at all of my work as personal work. I'm not a photographer who like switches it up when they have an advertising client. I know that this person or these people are hiring me for my aesthetic. They're looking at my personal work and drawing from that and saying, we want something like that, but that will fit like our aesthetic. So I just did a cover, I can't say who for, but it's a really big cover that's coming out. And on set, the client literally like told me like, okay, we're looking for something like this. Like we want to like, shoot something, similar to like, they gave me like a description. And then I knew exactly what they were looking for. And I went into my Instagram and showed them 3 images that would fit that. And they were like, this is exactly what we want. And all I had to do was translate that to what we were doing on set that day. And they were super happy. And it's like, that's another point that I would like to make. is that, you know, if you're not necessarily working, if you're not getting hired for editorial jobs, it's really important to keep making work and keep developing ideas and building your archive, because when you get the opportunity to finally, you know, start working regularly and start working with clients, then you already know everything you need to know to execute whatever it is that they're asking you. And you'll already have like an archive to pull from. If they're like, oh, we're looking for something like this, you already know you can pull it off because you've done it before. Maybe you're doing it in a different way for them. But yeah, it's just really important to like keep making work until you like get to the point where you are, you know, working either part-time or full-time as a photographer.
This is a good place to get to the second one. I want to make sure we get through Adonis and leave us with some advice on how to get to where you are. Men Nearly, can you very quickly kind of guide us through that?
Yeah, so a friend of mine had a magazine called Unbiased, and he asked me to do an editorial with him. And this was before everything also. And, you know, I'd wanted to do a shoot with like multiple models, because for a while I was just working like with, you know, one model per session. And I wanted to kind of push myself. So we cast these three models. Jabril, who has his like hand over his face, and he's this was like one of his earliest shoots, but now he's like doing huge campaigns for like Uniqlo and Ralph Lauren. Like he's blown up exponentially. And then the middle model is dang it, I can't remember his name, but he's done like big campaigns for Calvin Klein. Like this is like, it's kind of nice to get models before they blow up, because then you can, you know, kind of say, yeah, I shot them first, and then everybody else kind of jumped on the bandwagon. But anyways, so yeah, it was a little bit tough getting this, you know, image, because I think also to get the images that I was trying to get, this kind of like closeness, because one, Jabril, the model with his hand over his face, he was so new to modeling, and he was so new to like being close to other models and touching, especially like other men, that it was difficult for him to loosen up and be comfortable being so close. The other two models had been modeling for a while, and there wasn't like this like fear of like touching other people and like being close. So that aspect actually kind of really comes across in the photos, in the rest of the photos that we took. But this one, I just really love the texture of their skin together. I love the fact that you can't see Jubril's face, and that the model on the lower end, I can't remember his name right now, that his face is almost obscured. I don't know. A lot of my work, that you can't really see the model's face, which, at least my personal work, and I don't know where that you know, interest comes from, but I just love the idea of like you not being able to see. It's like this hidden part of them. And even if they're being super physical, like a lot of the work that I shot with Adonis, he's being super physical, but you can't see his face. And it's almost like, you know, how Black men are like anonymous, and how they have to kind of like hide themselves and hide their masculinity and hide, you know, these aspects of themselves to survive in this world. And it's not just Black men, it's Black people in general. Like, you know, you have to like be a certain way in order to, like, you can't like be, even if you're being like racially profiled, or even if you're, you know, if you're in the presence of police, it's like their reaction to you is like 1,000 times different than their reaction would be to like a white person that was like right next to them. Like your life is in jeopardy. You know what I mean? So, so yeah, that's kind of like part of like my thinking behind, you know, when these like models' faces are obscured, these like Black men, their faces are obscured. So.
Okay, that's perfect. We got one more, which is that one. What can you tell us about that?
So So this is Adonis Botho, who is kind of a famous model. And I shot him twice. The first time I shot him was for an editorial for a magazine that I don't remember. But he was just starting out and really just amazing. And, you know, I was like, wow, like why do people not know who he is? Why isn't he like so much bigger? And then I shot him 2 years later for this, which was my magazine, Scruggs magazine. And it took me 2 years to finish. It was a self-assigned project. It was print. I shot all the content, I wrote all the content. This photograph and the editorial that I shot of him basically informed like my work now. So like shooting this personal work, like push my aesthetic and my like viewpoint to the next level. So that's why, again, I say it's really important to self-assign and you know, create your own project and keep creating work. So this one, we shot this in the back alley of this house that I was living in Queens. And he just started, you know, playing with this shirt, and he just like put his shirt over his head, and that's how that happened. But it's great to find models that, you know, can engage and can, you know, kind of be a bit abstract and not have to have so much direction. Like if you give them like a little piece of direction and they kind of run with it, and he's that like kind of model. So this photo blew up on Tumblr when Tumblr was big, before Tumblr started, you know, censoring everybody. Yeah, this photo like was really popular on Tumblr. Had like maybe like 40,000 likes and reblogs, which is a lot for me. For some people, they have like 1 million reblogs, but like for me, 40,000 is a lot. So, so yeah.
Okay, I think there's one more little thing we want to talk about. That's Travis, right?
That's Travis.
That's Travis.
Yeah.
That's Travis. And that's Rolling Stone. Here's how we're going to end this. I would like you to tell these people, how do you go from the south side of Chicago, in case you don't know, in Amsterdam? Can I say fairly, Dana, that it's just not easy growing up on the south side? Is that a fair assessment without getting derogatory?
I think that it wasn't hard for me in terms of like, I didn't grow up in Inglewood, right, which is, you know, the litmus for like what they call, like, you know, how they describe Chicago, right, and Black people on the south side of Chicago. I was lucky that I had a mother who supported me and gave me all the tools to succeed. I was in private school. She worked, you know, constantly. We weren't rich, but she worked around the clock at a bank, you know, so that I could go to private school, so that I could have, you know, extracurricular activities. I was in Chicago Children's Choir for 10 years, traveled all over the world. She sacrificed everything for me. So that's how I made it through that. But I didn't grow up in like, quote unquote, the hood. I grew up in a Black neighborhood that wasn't like wealthy, like it was lower middle class. But yeah, I mean, the idea around, you know, just to quickly, you know, like growing up on the south side of Chicago, there's a lot of upper middle class, rich Black people that live in Chicago. The majority of people that live in Chicago are working people. You know, they aren't poor, but there's a subsection of Chicago that is not given funds, you know, from the city. You know, the streets are broken. There's only, you know, liquor stores and chicken shacks, and like there's no community in those neighborhoods because the city doesn't, you know, put any money into it. So that's why you get this like crime, and you get people, you know, killing each other because they don't know anything, you know, more than, you know, their like 10-block radius. They've maybe never been, you know, downtown, or they've never been on the north side, which is a white area. Or if they do go up there, they see, oh, it's so nice here, it's clean. There's, you know, restaurants to go to, there's coffee shops to go to, and then you feel like even more defeated because you're like, I don't deserve more than what I have when I'm going back to like where I live. So, that's what I would say about, growing up on the South Side. I had privileges because my mother worked so hard. I did not grow up rich by any means. But, in that way, it gave me the tools to get to where I am because like I had a certain level of education and privilege within like being a Black person. So in terms of like getting to this point, where I'm shooting the cover for Rolling Stone magazine, it's like you work so hard, and then you like don't work for a while because you're defeated and you feel like no one is ever going to hire you for anything. And I went through all of those phases. It took me 6 years to get to this point. I like Mona said, I was working at a nail salon in the West Village, managing that for 4.5 years. Prior to that, I worked at Whole Foods as a cashier. I worked at Cirque du Soleil, shooting, people like that were coming into the show wearing like a horrible like, clown hat, and just, I did what I had to do to survive in New York. But another aspect of not being able to figure out how to make it is that a lot of people in the industry won't tell you how to move forward because there's this fear of scarcity. And they're like, oh, if I'm, telling you how to like make it, then that means that potentially I'm going to lose out on a job. So, I would ask people all the time, how do you get clients? How do you, get editorial work? And like, I would always give very vague answers. And then finally, a friend of mine in January of last year told me how. And he's like, basically, he gave me a little email list to start off with of like photo editors and creative directors. And he's like, you just need to go on LinkedIn, find out who is a decision maker at these publications and brands that you want to work with. All you have to do is type in their name, not type in their name, type in creative director Nike, photo editor Glamour magazine. And these names will pop up. And then you kind of like figure out the email handle to these companies. And then you just start emailing them. And once I got that, and then once I also realized, I told him, I have a bunch of photo editors that follow me on Instagram, but they've never like reached out. And he's like, you need to like contact them. If you know that you have like someone who is in the position to hire you following you on Instagram or on Facebook, you have to reach out to them because yeah, maybe they're seeing your work all the time, but they want to know that you want to work with them. So I went through my Instagram, like put together, a Google Doc of like all those people, their name, their position, their email address, when I reached out to them the first time, when I followed up with them, what the outcome was. And then I would go on LinkedIn and like find all these like, figure out the emails of all these people. And it's not easy. It's not a quick thing. You know what I mean? It happened quickly, but like, if you have to take the time out to do this. And I would like for weeks, all I was doing was finding emails and not shooting, just finding emails, emailing people, following up, building my list. And then, I started getting meetings. I started, especially amongst the people that already followed me on Instagram, I reached out to them. I would just email them and say, hey, I'm, New York-based photographer. I'm interested in any projects that you have in the future. Here's a link to some of my work. And if they were local, if they were in New York, I'm like, I would love to come in for a meeting, or I would love to meet you for tea, and like not being afraid to ask people that. And I would I would end up getting meetings with these people, but no one would hire me because I didn't have any editorial work. I didn't have any big brands that I'd shot for. I had all self-assigned work. So long story short, I had like maybe 4 months of these meetings and emailing, and out of the blue, on the same day I got fired from my job at this nail salon, basically for advocating for women of color that work there. They basically at the same day I got an email from ESPN asking me if I was interested in shooting the body issue. And
okay, hold on. I gotta stop you right there. I don't know if anybody heard that, but that's like that moment in your life when you're done and you get fired and you start to give up your dream, and then ESPN calls. Like, what day of the week is that?
yeah, it was a Tuesday.
Okay. Okay. All right.
I'm joking. I have no idea what day it was.
That's pretty cool, though. Touche. I like it. I like it.
But
So
yeah, I mean, exactly.
To just to wrap this up, I don't want to keep you forever, and we've got Richard de Bourg and Yves Bayat sitting here, and you'll learn about them later. But Dana, can you give, just in general, one piece of inspiration for the people who haven't read your beautiful magazine? I read this. This is like a journal of her existence. If I can be intimate now, because it's all in here in print anyway, Dana, this is how she did it, is all in here. Like the depression, not wanting to get out of the bed, not having any money, all of that stuff. It's in here. Except it looks like this, so it will like keep you turning the pages, right? But it's a very, very good thing. Dana, give us one 22-second sort of nugget of how to keep going when you don't want to. Then we'll let you go back to your world in Brooklyn.
Well, as you know, I cannot like tell us a short story or give like little, like short advice. I don't know. I think you just don't give up. And I know it sounds like really, basic and really, but it's like you just can't give up. Like, and also realizing that you're not always going to be motivated. Like there were like months, actually like a year that I really didn't make work. And I was just like, tired and like sleeping all the time. And like, at one point I was going to
What made you wake up? Why did you get back out of I know the answer. I read the book.
I mean, that is prior to moving. Like a lot of that is prior to like moving to New York.
Yeah.
But like within like when you're actually like in it, like trying to be a photographer, because that book was written about like my life before I became a photographer.
Right.
But I just think, it's, just trying to, just realizing that this won't last forever. Like this moment, like even if it lasts for years, like I had an existential crisis and thought I was gonna like never make it and never like live a comfortable life and be, poor forever. Because when I say I was poor, I was poor living here. It's difficult. It's difficult. But you have to keep believing in yourself. You have to keep pushing your aesthetic. You have to like not bend your work to what you think will get you paid, because ultimately you won't enjoy what you're doing. And ultimately people might start paying you to do stuff that you don't like. But when you are strong in your aesthetic and your viewpoint, then people will hire you to do what you do. So like I never, like I just shoot what I like to shoot, whether it's for Rolling Stone or for, Nike or for, personal work. I just try to like shoot stuff that I think is beautiful. And then, yes, tailor to what the client wants, but ultimately they want what you can do. So it works out.
That's a perfect thing. That's a perfect way to end it. I'm not going to let anybody ask questions because we have a lot more territory to cover it and they need to go see the work. But Dana, thank you so much for joining us from Brooklyn, Amsterdam. Say goodbye to Dana.
Thank you. Bye. Okay.
We'll see you in Amsterdam live very soon.
Soon, hopefully.
I'll help you. I'll come and get you. I will hold your passport.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Ciao,
bye.
ciao. Okay. Bye-bye. Max, how are we doing? We okay? It's all good? Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. This is a piece that's downstairs as well from Leila Adjovi. All of the information about the piece is downstairs. You should go experience it. It's different seeing it live. This belongs to this man right here. So we have the opportunity to, if he wants to, but here's what Richard does. I ask him questions about his work, and he goes, I don't know, what's it mean to you? Right? Which is fair enough, right? Fair enough. But if you want to share, you can. It's up to you.
What do I want to share? I'm not like Dana, so I'll keep it short. Dana likes to talk more about her work than I do. For one, I don't really necessarily feel I think the first time we had like a conversation was like I didn't really feel the whole blackness and being all part of the blackness.
Yeah.
My mom's a Chinese Asian, my dad's a black African, so I'm mixed Asian, mixed African. And I wasn't brought up with color, so in the country where I live, I'm from Curacao. I was brought up not seeing color. I didn't know what was black, what was white. Moving to Holland when I was 17, that's when I learned to see color. It's the Dutch people showed me that's a Moroccan, that's African, that's a Turkish guy, and that's when I suddenly start seeing color. Up until I was 17, I didn't even know. My best friend was a black girl. I had no idea. She was black. And it was funny that the older people around us always saw the difference. They always saw that there was like, there's this half black guy playing with a really, really black girl in Curacao, and that's really frowned upon by the black community and by the white community, because it's very strange, they don't understand it. So my parents were really like good at keeping that away from us, the kids, and just letting the kids be the kids. So that's how I was brought up. So I didn't really see that until I moved here. So to my work and me shooting black people or putting them in like a more fantasy setting like you're seeing here, or in the other images you'll see downstairs, just is not necessarily seeing a black person in something fantasy. It's just shooting a person as it is, as I feel it is. I know I choose to shoot black people in this setting because I don't see it a lot. So that's when there's a conscious decision where to, okay, let's put some black girls into a bit more fantasy setting, because you don't see it. You don't see the fancy dresses. You don't see the fantasy makeup. It's usually like a white person in there. So there's where I started finding designers who work with designs for black people, or black designers themselves who want to make clothing for them. So this is one of them. She also comes from Curacao, and I haven't met a designer from Curacao that makes fantasy clothing. So the first time I met her, we were like, holy shit, you make fantasy clothing? And she's like, holy shit, you like fantasy? You shoot fantasy? Like, what the fuck? We're from the same island? There's like, this doesn't mix, this doesn't compute. So that's kind of how this shoot came together. We're like both from the same island, and we both like the same type of subjects, and we kind of threw it all together.
I like it. Somebody on my team, who shall remain nameless in case he doesn't want me to say this, I'm going to say this. I'll pretend I said it. He said that looks like something from a film, and it was like James Bond that came to his mind. Does that make you happy or sad?
Happy or sad? If he feels that way, he feels that way, right?
Right. Yeah. He was like, if it were James Bond made by Steve McQueen.
Yeah, there you go. I could see that happening.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. Thank you.
All right, I'll take that. And that one.
Yeah. Same thing. It's putting people in type of settings I haven't seen before. I haven't seen a lot. I shoot a lot of fashion. I shoot for a lot of magazines. I shoot a lot of portraits. So I'm pretty much combining my own work, my own fine art with things I don't see a lot. So I don't see a lot of black people in fantasy clothing, so I put them in fantasy clothing.
Nice.
And a lot of white people shoot black people, and then they Photoshop them a little gray. It's a thing.
Yeah.
So I started like shooting black people to show their actual skin color, to like show people this is black skin color, and it's not like grayish or yellowish or more white. No, it's this.
Yeah.
So it's actually showing people what the black skin does on pictures, and then teaching it to the world.
Because it's different. It's a different view. I mean, feel free to jump in at any moment, anytime. Is it okay if people ask you any questions, or you're not? Anybody have any questions for Richard about any of this? Anything at all? No.
I have like an hour story, so it's fine.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll come back to it. That's okay. Let's see what's next. What do we got here? Again, this is work from Zwijger Traoré. You'll see it downstairs. Again, he's not here. He's from Burkina Faso. But what he's trying to do with Transcendence are two pieces, that one and that one. He is trying to get people to experience the idea of going into a trance when you dance to transcend your everyday experience. That's what it is. And by training, he's a civil engineer. I don't know if you noticed, but there's like a theme to all my photographers. They're not really like people who came out of art school or studied photography. It's like a journalist who picked up a camera, or a civil engineer who's supposed to be building buildings, but instead he's taking pictures of people going in and out of the building. Or it's someone who, like Dana, is also self-taught. I don't know if you picked up on that or not. But she learned at YouTube University. So there's hope for all of us.
Same.
Just so you know.
YouTube University.
That's who we are. That's how it goes. Okay, Francis, this is also downstairs. It's also on the little postcards that are at the turning of the door. So Francis, same principle, self-taught. CNN journalist, Ghana, Africa. He's going to be downstairs. The first three pieces that you see come from Francis as well. Beautiful work. This is also the branding of my magazine. If you've looked at my magazine, this has been kind of with me for a year and a half. That's the first work that I saw from Francis Kokoroko. And I happen to be a boxing fan. Are any boxing fans in this room? Anybody like boxing? Jake, how dare you? That's my son back there, my other son. So, yeah, I like boxing. And I liked the fact that this kid is like 12 years old, and you can see all the intensity in his face, right? And that's kind of how I feel about life. I feel like you have to find a way or make one. That's kind of like my motto. And you got to box your way through sometimes, and you got to sweat, or you get nothing. So this photograph has everything in it for me. I think the way that I wanted to end this is I wanted to open a discussion if you had any questions about anything that we've talked about, and I wanted to have Eve sort of give us some feedback, because I know you're not a photographer, but
no, not a
you know
photographer.
everything that we know. You walk through this life the way I walk through this life, the way Richard walks through it. You know what's up. So this is this little quote from Maya Angelou. Anybody familiar with Maya Angelou's work? Anybody? That's good. That's what I thought it would be. The idea is we're up here talking about versions of Africanity and Blackness and skin color, and Dana's telling you her story. I'm telling you what I know. Eve is going to tell you a few things. The idea is for the people in this room who don't necessarily have as much melanin as we do, doesn't matter. You can still learn. You can read a book. You can come to an event like this. You can talk to a person like us. We'll be your friends tonight. Just ask us questions. And no, you can't touch our hair. The answer is always no. Okay? Super simple.
Let's put on Solange a seat at the table.
Right, so there'll be no hair touching, but we're very cool people, and you can talk to us about anything. This is the moment, and this is what I have to say. Once you know better, you do better. We can make the world better by just learn. Open your heart, open your mind, learn a little bit, right? So, Eve, if you want to do me a favor and tell me this one thing. I know you came to an event here about, I think it was to do with involving, what do they call it? I don't even want to say it now.
The event was about the creative industry.
Yeah.
The name of it was Them Against Us, if I'm correct. Max was there also. What was the name of the event again? Something with creatives. So what basically, to make a long story short, it was about like the creative industry in the Netherlands and generally in Amsterdam is like a very elite club where you don't get in like very easily. But for people with a color, it's even harder to get in because it's like a scene where everybody knows each other and they're like very high fences, and you can only get in a certain type of way. But the topic of the evening was that a lot of stories that are told about people with different backgrounds are being told by people who don't have the backgrounds.
Right.
So the evening was about how can we claim our own spot and tell our own stories, if I'm correct, Max. If I'm, yeah, that was basically what the evening was about, and
Okay.
I found it very interesting because I'm also like a struggle, not struggling, but I'm still like trying to get in on a higher plateau
Right.
to kind of expose my work, but it's not an easy route
Right.
to get there.
Right.
Like get with the big brands.
Yeah. So at this event, may I ask, who's asking the question, how do we get more, let's use the word diversity. I'll use that word, because that's
basically what.
So who's asking the question? Do they look like us up here or not like us? That's a fair way.
Yeah, it was a diverse crowd and
So-
diverse panel.
and diverse people answering the question. So
yeah.
I would like to know what you think the answer is to that, and I would like to know what Richard thinks the answer is to that. So what's the answer to if I say, well, how do you get more diversity in the creative sector in the Netherlands? What do you say?
I think we have to lose a lot of paradigms. And one paradigm is that we need like approval. That's one paradigm that we need to lose. And me as well as a black maker. And I think we have to create more ownership, like start to own and be proud to own and unapologetic. Be unapologetic in your work, because if it's dope, it's dope.
Right.
No one can deny that. So let's stop waiting for approval, and let's start building for ourselves, but also for more people to get to know what we really are and what we really want to say.
Yeah, this is what I love about Yves. He's super positive, but he always makes my life really easy because he gives me like little nuggets, like stop waiting and start building. That's pretty good. That's a T-shirt, right? That's good. So I love that. Richard, what do we do to get more?
It's quite easy. It's on his hat. Just fucking do it.
I secretly knew he was going to say that. I knew he was going to say that.
It's easy.
I know.
I
know.
It's just everything he's saying. We're waiting on approval. We're blah, 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 blah. I don't wait. I just fucking do it. I make the call. I go to the place. I introduce myself.
Yeah.
I do it. They fall in love with me, and they give me the opportunity to do it.
Right. Right. It's the same. What did I tell you before I got here? Every single person that is in this room, every single person that's on the wall downstairs, this lady working in the nail salon, it's just like, hey, my name's Mona. I want to do a thing. Want to do the thing with me? And they go, yes or no. Same. There's a gentleman sitting in this audience who shall remain nameless, but I walked into his shop, same principle. I'm doing this thing. I brought Dana with me. Want to do the thing? Yes or no? Whatever. And there are people who said no, and this has to do with the sort of the framework that I was talking to you about before, Max. The framework of this magazine, I just made it. I made it because it needed to be made. Like, who would I be waiting for? I'm the person I'm waiting for. What the hell would I be waiting for, right? And if you don't see what you want out there, then go make it. Who's stopping you? All the tools are there. I started with my iPhone. I borrowed tools from people. I've got this man, Nick, sitting in the front row. I've never even met Nick. He does all my podcasts for me, like via. This is the first time I've seen his face. There's stuff out there to be done. Okay? So I'm not really sure if you have any questions at all or anything that you feel that we need to talk about, anything that's been left off the table. What do you got for me? Me personally, what am I going to do that? Go look at art downstairs? I'll tell you the truth. I've already got my second exhibit in mind. I was walking over here yesterday, and this is the part where I feel sorry for my husband because he's like, can you just like do one thing? And I'm like, no, I can't. So next I'll be doing another exhibit. I think you'll enjoy it. I may involve you in it. And I got books in my head too, so yeah. And these gentlemen up here, seriously, are my brothers. They keep me grounded, and they stay out there. And this man is just Yves Baya, Young Valuable Energy. That's what he did with his name, Yves Baya, Young Valuable Energy. How dope is that? How dope is that? Like, he's out there doing what he does. Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, I want to add something because a lot of people think when you say Eve, it's like from Adam and Eve, but no, it's a bit fancier. It's from Yves Saint Laurent, but without the S, without the S at the end. So it's a 3-letter name, and I thought like let me flip it and make it my company name, and I flipped it into Young Valuable Energy.
Yeah.
Because I believe that we all have that young valuable energy, and that's an energy that we need to take care of because it's what keeps us rebellious, it's what makes us curious and also playful like young people. So please protect your young valuable energy.
There you go. Anything you want to say before we go?
Before you all get up, I'm going to make a selfie.
It's a good idea.
There you go. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining the Maker Podcast. It's our first live podcast. Thank you so much for showing up. We really appreciate it. Go out and make some shit. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.